Hello, and welcome back to Old School, a podcast from the Old Davie School Historical Museum. Thanks for sticking around for our second episode. Before we get started, here are a few updates and goings-on at the Old Davie School. Every Thursday from 3 to 5 p.m., we have an after-school session of our Step Back in Time field trip program. It's an opportunity for families to take a field trip together. Step back in time with interactive activities like washing laundry on a washboard and writing with a dip ink pen as you learn what life was like on the Everglades frontier 100 years ago. Pre-registration is required and can be purchased on our website at olddavieschool.org. Following CDC guidelines, masks are required and we keep the group small to allow for social distancing, and it's only $7 a person, so we hope to see you soon. And also brand new this year, we have a virtual field trip opportunity that brings the time traveling to you. So if you or anyone you know may be interested in taking a digital trip to the Old Davie School, let me know. You can email me at education@olddavieschool.org for more information. We are also offering guided tours on Wednesday and Saturdays at 10, 11:30, and 1 p.m. And coming up in October, we'll have Saturday specials with different activities every month. October, there will be a mad scientist lab where you can mix and taste some delicious potions. And there will also be investigators from the War Party Paranormal Group that'll be here to demonstrate their different equipment and techniques that they use in their paranormal research. And along with War Party Paranormal, we're offering an exclusive and unique look at the Old Davie School and the historic houses with a late-night paranormal investigation on October 30th from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. This will be limited to a very small group, and tickets are available now on our website. It's a full moon, too, so who knows what they'll find. Restrictions on event venues have also been lifted, and we are able to host small private events again. So if you're looking for venue space of any kind, for any kind of event, you can call us at 954-797-1044, or you can email any questions or inquiries to events@olddavieschool.org. But for now, let's get started and find out exactly why we are a town called Davie, and why we're in the Everglades at all. So we have to go back to when the area where we are in Davie today would have been a part of the Everglades. If you stood in front of what is now our school 1,000 years ago, you would have been standing in about knee-deep water and surrounded by sawgrass. Before development, before the drainage project and canals, before we can really get into the history of the community, we have to go back that thousands of years to the natural state of the Everglades. Lake Okeechobee would overflow south during the rainy season, and that water would move slowly out towards the coast. So the south end of the state was almost entirely under the shallow river of grass, with the swaying sawgrass prairies, cypress swamps, hardwood hammocks, and mangroves, and an amazing array of wildlife from prehistoric alligators to the roosting roseate spoonbills to varieties of orchids found nowhere else in the world. Environmentalist Marjorie Stoneman Douglas would later say, "There are no other Everglades in the world. They have always been, one of the unique regions of the earth, remote and never wholly known. Nothing anywhere else is like them." So we're the one Everglades in the whole world. It's amazing. Under the Swamp Act of 1850, the federal government turned this land over to the state for development. And ownership of this land by the state completely disregarded the native peoples who made their home in the Everglades, like the Seminoles at this time. Throughout the 1800s, the Seminoles were constantly pursued by the federal government to be forcibly removed to reservations in Oklahoma, like other tribes throughout the country, known as the Trail of Tears. This culminated as the three Seminole Wars, from 1817 to 1818, 1835 to 1842, and 1855 to 1858, respectively. But if you ask the Seminoles, it was an unending war. The Seminoles persisted, and they never signed a treaty with the U.S. government. In this area, during that second Seminole War period, the Seminoles made their home on the high ground of the Pine Island Ridge, which is where Pine Island Road is today, Treetops Park, that whole area. That's how it gets its name. When the water was higher, it was a chain of islands. We're definitely going to talk about this more on another episode soon. And we'll get to Davie, but not quite yet. First, we have to introduce Napoleon Bonaparte Broward. Broward was eventually the county's namesake that was formed in 1915, Broward ran for governor in 1904 on the platform to drain the useless swamp. That's what the 3 million acres of land was considered to be, a good-for-nothing, pestilence-ridden swamp. It's very upsetting. But he was successful, and on taking office, he started the Everglades Drainage Project. On July 4th, 1906, 2 dredges started their trek west from the north and south forks of the New River in Fort Lauderdale. But here's what is aggravating to me. From the North Fork, one dredge, named the Everglades, headed northwest to connect with another canal that led to Lake Okeechobee. And this is the canal that's along State Road 84. It was intended to be a shipping lane from Lake Okeechobee, so there's no railway connection at the time. So to bring out those goods from Central Florida out to the coast, they would use that canal right there. Okay, but the dredge named Everglades is heading towards Lake Okeechobee. Okay. Then, a second dredge called the Okeechobee headed west, directly west from the South Fork, towards the Everglades. So who was in charge of that? And they do it on purpose to bother me. They could have just changed the name. I don't know. But this is the canal. The Okeechobee dug the South New River Canal, and that's what runs east-west along Griffin Road today. They started in July, which is also the middle of a rainy season, so I don't know who was responsible for all this. Maybe it was Broward, but the state was responsible for the funding of this project, and it was very slow, and it was difficult, it was very costly. The dredges would strike limestone and break down regularly. Navigation was difficult. There would be dredges heading from the west to the east that they would have to meet up with, and they would get lost and have to send out poor navigators in a little rowboat hiking through the muck to meet up with the other boat to correct their travels. This doesn't even mention mosquitoes and wildlife that they would come across out here. The state began selling the land inexpensively to developers who would then take over the project. They would continue building the canals, building roads, and making it habitable for people. And one of those developers was Robert Parcell Davie, or R.P. Davie. He's a millionaire sugar beet farmer from Colorado. And a total side note, it occurred to me while I was getting this ready that he, not only is he a beet farmer, but he has a middle part and wears glasses, and I think striking resemblance to Dwight Schrute from The Office. So I'm going to post a picture on the Old Davie School Instagram, and you tell me what you think. Tell me if I'm crazy or not. I just think there's a similarity. Maybe they were the inspiration. Along with his partner J.R. McKinney, they purchased 28,000 acres of land by 1909. They continued building the canals, they drained the land, and they started a 10-acre experimental farm to demonstrate the almost limitless possibilities for this new land in the Everglades. And the experimental farm was a great marketing tool. People would be invited to take a free boat trip from Fort Lauderdale down the canal to see the successful crops growing. They would see the work being done on the canals, the small but growing amenities in the town, and they were encouraged to buy their land. They schmoozed you a bit on these trips. They had musicians that played on the boats. There were speakers who were experts on the Everglades, and they would give talks on the way out. So it sounds like a real event at the time. The company built a hotel to invite guests to stay a night on the frontier. And this was also used as a boarding house for employees working the dredges on the canal. This building, I think, is the oldest building still remaining in Davie, and maybe even the first habitable building in Davie. It's been used as a hotel. It was the first women's club clubhouse, who then organized the first library in town upstairs. It was a barbershop, gas station, and now today it's apartments right there on Griffin Road. It was built to last. It's gone through every hurricane since 1909. McKinney operated the hotel in the beginning, and he and his wife have the claim of having the first white child born in the Everglades, according to a newspaper in July 1912. Davie was very involved in the early years of the farm, splitting his time between living in Miami, Los Angeles, and Colorado Springs, and a good amount of time involved with the development process here, as well as many other investments around the country. He'd been involved in some mining projects before this, and later on he actually worked on another canal project in Arizona, something that I'm looking into. Seems very interesting. By 1913, the three major realty companies in this area, they merged together into the Everglades Sugar and Land Company, with V.W. Helm as the president. Davie still held interest as a director in the company, and he would attend meetings, but at that point, I think he became less directly involved in the development. He doesn't show up as much in the newspapers after that point. Now, one of the first groups of people to purchase Davie's land came from the Panama Canal Zone. The United States had been involved in constructing the Panama Canal since 1903, and many Americans worked on the project. Advertisements for the inexpensive Everglades land reached them in Panama, and many bought their land sight unseen. The group who began arriving in 1910 from the Panama Canal Zone called their new community here Zona. So that was what it was known as first. And so it was known until the growing community voted to change the official name to Davie in 1913. There are a few reports as to why. There are stories that it was in appreciation for R.P. Davie's contributions to the town, funding the pumps and building a school for the town, but those were really functions of the company and for making the land habitable for people. One article in a 1913 newspaper said there was confusion with another town named Ozona in Pinellas County. I think they chose Davie because of the experimental farm and the successful reclamation project of this land. It was tied to that Davie tract name, and it made business sense to shift to that name. So if you were heading west, you were heading west to the Davie tract, you were heading west to Davie, and it kind of just fell into place like that. But whatever the reason, the name Davie became official in 1914. And immediately, there was confusion with our neighbor next door, Dania, and according to one newspaper, a little trouble has been caused by similarity of the names Davie and Dania, especially when carelessly written. The writer should therefore write the name Davie very plainly on the envelope to avoid possible errors. So in the changing of the name to not confuse it with another town, they changed it with a name that was even closer. So who knows? But the newspapers, they continued to mix up Davie and Dania a good amount of time, which is very aggravating. But what are you going to do? So we have been Davie for 106 years, and not after Davy Crockett, which is what I thought growing up. After Robert Parcell Davie. And there's a long history that brought us here that we will delve more into in another episode. I do have a great book recommendation. If you're interested in all the crazy politics that went into the project to drain the Everglades at the turn of the century, you could check out The Swamp by Michael Grunwald. It goes through all the politics of protecting our Everglades today. It's very neat. I enjoyed it. Maybe you will too. And remember, you can visit the museum to see more history up close. And until next time, thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.